You can announce.
Thank
Oh.
you. The presentation facilitator is Rose Norman. I'm going to turn it over to Rose. She will introduce the program and the speakers. Rose?
You're muted, Rose. Are you going to pin her?
Got it.
Janet?
Thank you, Janet. For 22 years, from 1977 to 99, lesbians ran a cultural center called the Pagoda, surrounded by a lesbian residential community on the beach in St. Augustine, Florida. My book, The Pagoda, A Lesbian Community by the Sea, documents their history. It was an amazing experiment in living feminism, what most women's land groups try to do. Unlike any women's community before or since, they did it supported by an incorporated, tax-exempt goddess church that ran a women-only guest house and cultural center. In the closing decades of the 20th century, they produced regular women's music concerts, workshops, dances, art exhibits, and in the early days, they had a playwright in residence producing feminist plays. So today's program will begin with a pictorial overview of the Pagoda story, and then you'll hear from 3 longtime Pagoda residents. First will be Morgana McVicker, one of the founders of the Pagoda and its spiritual leader. She'll talk about the importance of the spiritual component in sustaining the community. Then Barbara Liu, who lived at the Pagoda from 1978 until the mid-90s and was instrumental in building the residential community and in creating the business models that allowed them to run a guest house and cultural center for over 20 years. And finally, Emily Green will talk about the Pagoda as a supportive community. Emily was their unofficial photographer and videographer in the 10+ years that she lived there. And she's archived over 20 Pagoda videos and hundreds of still photos with the Lesbian Home Movie Project, and we'll show you some of them at the end of the presentation. So now I'm going to share my screen to show you it's covering up what I need to click on. There. Well, that is the last slide. Sorry. The Pagoda story in pictures. This is a postcard of the Pagoda Motel in St. Augustine, Florida in the 70s.
Come on.
The big building on the right became the Pagoda Cultural Center and Guest House.
Come on.
Somebody needs to mute. The Cultural Center was surrounded by 12 tiny
You muted Rose too.
I know I don't. Rose, I need you to unmute yourself.
Yes.
Oh dear. I don't know how to unmute while I'm.
You're okay. You're unmuted.
Okay. So here's an aerial view of that property that became the Pagoda Motel. These cottages were built in the 30s and 40s, mostly by one man by hand. And then when he sold it in 1970, it turned into a motel and they built a swimming pool. By 1988, all of this was owned by women, lesbian women with a dream. It started in 1977 when a feminist dance theater troupe was looking for performance space. And when they found those beach cottages in that big house that would be perfect for their theater, they scraped together the money to buy the cottages, and they started looking for people who would go in together to buy the big building. And that's Morgana McVicker on the right. She was a professional dancer who choreographed dances in celebration of the divine feminine using matriarchal imagery from myth and prehistory. They remodeled the ground floor garage of that big building as a 50-seat theater and began producing feminist plays, variety shows, and concerts, as well as scripted ritual theater, as that's what you see here in this picture with Morgana and Barbara Lou, very early, 1978. 2 weeks before opening night, 4 more cottages and a duplex came up for sale on that property. And Barbara Lou and Lavender Lou were visiting that weekend looking for lesbian community. They moved there in 1978. So what started as looking for theater space turned into looking for residential space. By 1979, they had become an incorporated, tax-exempt church called Pagoda Temple of Love, celebrating the divine feminine. For 22 years, Pagoda women pursued a dream of personal freedom, offering safe space and respect for women. They banned alcohol, meat, and men from their cultural center. They loved celebrating spring equinox, Halloween, and winter solstice, and they especially loved planning croning rituals, honoring elder women and respecting aging. Now, most of these women were in their late 20s and early 30s when this started, but there were a few people who, in this case, Ellen Spangler and Rose DiBernardo, who were turning 50. They were the first to be croned there at the pagoda in 1983 at solstice, winter solstice. In the early years, they regularly produced feminist plays. From 78 to 82, a feminist playwright was in residence writing and producing plays like the comedy An Afternoon of Sophie and Myrtle. This scene is from a 1980 production of that comedy. These are some other shows that they produced. Princess Cinderella with Emily Green as Prince Charming on the left and Morgana McVicker as Cinderella, known as Cindy. They also produced A Rose is a Rose Has a Rose about Alice B. Toklas and Gertrude Stein. The playwright was named Trudy Anderson, and we have not been able to find her in my searches. The pagoda became best known for women's music concerts. In 1979, they produced 19 concerts on that little stage. That's the most of any year. And this is the Berkeley Women's Music Collection, who came all the way from California for opening night and bought a cottage. Our favorite OLOC member, celebrated musician Alex Dobkin, performed regularly at the pagoda and was also a dues-paying supporter. And most musicians weren't dues-paying because basically staying at the pagoda was almost all they got for playing. The door behind her leads to something they call the cave, a dressing room, which they also rented out as sleep space. Composer and musician Kay Gardner performed at the pagoda several times, usually doing a workshop on music and healing. Here she's performing on the right with Nuridafina Abeni. In 1980, pagoda women began building a women's residential community. They had been just renting those cottages to women only. But when they decided to go residential, there were no more cottage rentals. Instead of billing themselves as a resort, they called themselves a retreat, as you can see on the left, the front of a brochure, publicity brochure. And the cultural center became a guest house for supporters, as well as a performance space and ritual space. Before, mostly people who worked at the pagoda were living there. Pagoda supporters pledged $10 to $20 a month to Pagoda Temple of Love, and that made them eligible to stay at the cultural center for free for a constantly changing number of nights. In 1988, Marilyn Murphy, shown here on the left, and her partner Irene Weiss moved to the pagoda from California. They were part of a group of 8 women who bought the last 4 cottages that had been the Pagoda Motel, plus 2 beachfront lots and the swimming pool. And this doubled the size of the pagoda property and created a second cottage organization, North Pagoda, which led to some internal disputes. And here's that aerial view again. You can see Old Pagoda, the 2 strips of cottages. It's eight cottages, the cultural center and the duplex. That was pagoda for the first 10 years or so, and they did not own the swimming pool. A group did own the center, and they later donated it to the church. But in 1988, that last strip, which is on public access road, but Beachcomber Way, sold to a group of 9 women on one mortgage. In 1995, a new bridge replaced the old Volano Bridge, and this caused problems. If the arrows point on the left, the new bridge opened right at their entrance. The old bridge had been a block away. They started having cars breaking through, going through their gate and causing wrecks. In 1999, the church sold the cultural center and swimming pool to another group of women, and the church moved to another women's community in the mountains of North Alabama, Alpine. Several leaders had moved away in the mid to late 90s, and the cultural center had run into debt. The building that was the cultural center was sold in 2016 as a vacation rental. Most of the original 8 cottages you see here are still owned by lesbians, much remodeled since this 1980s picture, but the residents no longer live as an intentional community. Some of the cottages are also available for rent, mostly to women. The duplex and cultural center, which are on the end of this facing the highway, are both now expensive vacation rentals. And I want to acknowledge the credits on all the photos in this and subsequent slides are from Emily Green, by Emily Green, or courtesy of Barbara Lou and Morgana McVicker. So now I am going to stop screen sharing, if I can remember how. Okay. And open another. I have to change each one. I'm going to open another set of slides. And turn it over to Morgana McVicker to talk about the spiritual component that was so important to the pagoda community. Morgana. Oh, you got to unmute. I'm sorry.
Okay, now can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I want to welcome everybody, and I'd like to begin to share with you my good fortune throughout my life in being involved in women-only spaces. As a child, I experienced sisterhood at my great aunt Alice's camp for girls in the mountains near where I live now. And it was there that I found safe space, Amazon energies, lesbianism, my deep love for nature, and my connection to my Scottish heritage, the folklore, and also the woodland fairies, which are up here on this mountain today. In high school, I belonged to an organization called Junior Girls, which was a service organization that provided clothes and counseling to young women who were disadvantaged. And in college, as an undergraduate, I lived in a sorority house and participated in our initiation rituals to the Greek goddess Vesta and her eternal flame. So I fell in love with the goddess early. While studying for my master's in social philosophy, dance, and women's studies, I found myself in the right place at the right time, experiencing, like many of us, the second wave of feminism, the lesbian feminist revolution, and the growing women's spirituality community or movement, and all of these were intertwined. A close circle of sisters established the first women's center at my university, Florida State University. And we provided an office with a library, a coffee house where we also taught about the goddess in classes, and an arts building that produced both t-shirts and a wonderful journal. In my time afterwards, I worked toward a second master's in psychology and creative movement while finding new sisters in NOW's lesbian task force in Miami. So it was 2 years later when I moved to St. Augustine with dreams of creating a women's space centered around women's culture and, of course, women's spirituality. So I brought my love of the goddess with me, and also my love of the ancient women's dance that celebrated female sexuality and empowerment. The circles and the spirals, the rhythms, the movement all connected me to nature and to myself. Even before the pagoda received its 501c3 status as a goddess religion, it was a very sacred landscape. It was grounded in the sandy soil of the earth, with its beach, sand dunes, and the ancient energies of the ancestors. The air was clean and pure, with the healing energy of the negative ions that flowed inland across the waves. The plentiful sunshine brought light and joy throughout all of the years. And Mother Ocean, the original source of life, what a beautiful picture. It was constantly in motion with its changing tides and melodious sounds. These four elemental energies were very strong at the pagoda. They fed us and they healed us over so many years. As we grew through our moon circles and seasonal celebrations and rituals, in our meetings, and our conflict resolution weekly group, and in working and playing together, we cooperatively created the theater and the concert hall, the store, the library, the workshops, our mini dances, and of course, our favorite pool parties. This allowed us to develop friendships and close bonds over the years. Our ritual circles were vital to the long-term existence of the Pagoda Temple of Love. In circles, we honored all ages. We faced each other, we heard each other, we breathed together into the center of the circle, its very soul. We blessed each other as well. With salt water, we gave thanks for what we had received since last together. And we made wishes for our futures, which we all visualized together to help manifest. We connected with our passion through our candles, our music, and our magic and our joy. And as we held hands, we connected our hearts. We felt personal power and equal power, which is felt in a circle, the symbol that was so important at Pagoda. Over time, I'm sorry. I hear someone talking. Can you hear me still?
Yes.
Okay. So anyway, over time, we were able to experience in the circle equal power and personal power and the unfolding of self-respect and self-love, which was so important in order to work together. In our seasonal circles and our ritual theater, we celebrated the equinoxes and the solstices and the cross-quarter days by reading and reenacting our goddess stories with the unique attributes of different goddesses. We were able to experience these energies within ourselves, and we could experience our own divinity. I believe that our spirituality sustained us in many years through our personal and group struggles, our love affairs, and our very hard work. As residents, we grew closer to overcome the divisions that were there, enabling us to embrace the joy and celebration of the pagoda. Retreat members, circle goers, and visiting artists, singers, dancers, and workshop leaders also helped to sustain our sacred space that was outside of patriarchy. And they were able to take with them new energy, new strength, and creativity. So, in celebrating our sexuality and our growing cultural revolution, Pagoda's women's space was both erotic and inspirational. For we experience intimacy within ourselves, with each other, and also with the land itself. Even in the later years, when more focus was put on class and race differences, and the altar was removed in what would become a living room, the spirit of place that we honored and protected for so many years remained even with the increasing development that surrounded it. Our beliefs and our practices created what Rose calls a magic bubble. This created a very safe sanctuary and a very exciting adventure until its cycle was complete.
Thank you, Morgana.
You're welcome.
Now I need to share screen again and introduce Barbara Lou. You know, the thing gets right in the middle of where you need to be clicking. Okay. Barbara will tell us about the connections between the Spiritual and Cultural Center and the residential community. Barbara.
We were young and energetic and fired up with lesbian and feminist energy that went both into the spiritual cultural work and into our residential community. Even those who were considered older members of the group were still quite young as we look back today. We were serious from the first meeting when Morgana gathered us together in 1977 to create Pagoda Community. Rose's book has a good summary of how the labor-intensive work of renting the cottages by the night and week caused us to meet and plan a way to be fully residential and still keep the center open for women. This is a photo taken after one of those meetings. We continued to meet, plan, work to keep the community and the center going, so guests could relax and enjoy the space. In an effort to keep the cottages in lesbian hands, we created the cottage eligibility list in the order of involvement at Pagoda. This list, updated in 1986, shows the current cottage owners, plus women who put a lump sum of money into the center in their first year as a monthly financial supporter. The list also indicates if she was living, working, involved in the community, and the amount of her monthly donation. TS means she let us know she had to temporarily suspend her donation, but hoped to return to us as a supporter. We also had an agreement to apply the inflation rate to a cottage seller's original investment so that she would have the same buying power when she sold her cottage, but would not make a profit. We lived very close together in a small amount of land. sharing mortgages, insurance, utility payments, and sometimes some of the septic tanks on hot water heaters. We kept those old beachfront buildings going. They were built in 1936, and many had the original roof, kitchenette, and garage. We tried often to do the work ourselves, or we found lesbians to hire. Each spring and fall, we removed every air conditioner, cleaned and oiled them, and stored them until the spring when we reversed the process, securing them safely in windows in the cottages and in the center. As houses were built around us, we raised the walls on the sun deck where women like to sunbathe nude. We found ways to fundraise, trying yard sales, and eventually conducting an annual raffle, mailing books of raffle tickets all over the country and awarding week-long stays in the center to winners. Through all of it, we tried to have fun. Morgana and Leslie had an annual costume party for Holomas. We played games, we played poker, we swam in the pool, sometimes nude, and we played sports. Volleyball in the middle of the driveway, croquet, basketball, and finally, paddle tennis, which is the one that stuck and that several of us played for years. And we ate. For holidays, we had big gatherings. For potluck in the theater, here's one, here's another. We made it to DC for National Gay Rights marches starting in 1979. At the next march, we were joined by the Melrose lesbians who added their name to our banner. We enjoyed our beautiful environment, the birds, the flowers, and the ocean so close you could hear the waves from a cottage and see it from the attic guest room in the center.
Thank you, Barbara. Okay, now I've got Emily is next, and she will also talk about her videos after she talks about her pictures and her story. But first, I need to share screen again. Okay. Go, take it away, Emily. Uh-oh, you're muted.
Thank you. What it meant to me to find Pagoda in the community I had been seeking to find all my life was, as I have always said, about arriving at the Pagoda in November of 1978. I felt like I died and gone to lesbian heaven. In college, I had my first romance with a woman, but after 1.5 years, she decided what we were doing wasn't right, and I tried to go straight. The 70s for me was finding out that my heterosexual marriage was not right for me and spending 3 years pulling my life back together, going to nursing school in Florida, and accepting who I was, a lesbian. I was just 32 and only out of nursing school for 2 years when Wiggy and I saw the ad for Pagoda in Rainbow's newsletter Changes and went up to visit. I was not real aware of the women's movement, but did know I wanted a different life from just living in a neighborhood with no connection to other people and their values. My realizing the moment I stepped foot into the Pagoda community, it only took seconds for me to want to be a part of this adventure. Not because I was into the culture or arts, but because I was seeking to be with women who were trying to create a new way of living together. Wiggy and I bought the Amelia Cottage that first visit and spent our first year preparing to move there, fixing up our tiny home, and finding a solution for Wiggy's mom to be taken care of. I was pretty much a behind the scenes person at Pagoda. Once we moved there, doing what I could to make this community be a place where many of us lived, and as soon found out also a cultural center. I soon became the cleaning coordinator for rental units, as well as taking on jobs like being a reservationist, a greeter, and setting up for the concerts and plays that started to happen. We met monthly for business issues, but also to discuss what values we would want to have happen. And when we bought the Amelia, we had learned that these were lesbians who were not there to make money off of cottage rentals and cultural events. At Pagoda, I found friends in the lesbian community and also was able to live out my ideals. I'd long held to not buy into the capitalist system. We chose to pay everyone in those beginning years the same small salary, whether it was cleaning cottages or doing legal work. It was what I had dreamed a community could be. But most of all, I was beginning to see what lesbian friends could do to be supportive, such as teaming up to help remodel our cottages. I had gone back to work in a local nursing home in 1980, which pushed me to the edge once again of questioning what I had to offer anyone, let alone a community, as I began to fall apart. The stress and challenge of being the director of nursing at the nursing home pushed me beyond the ability to fight my childhood fears my father had instilled in me. I left the nursing home, and as I began to isolate myself, drinking a lot, and unbeknownst to me, my dear friend and roommate, Gabi from Germany, had gotten 3 to 4 of our Pagoda community members to come talk with me, offer me options of doing therapy and contacting my sister. I was angry at first, being pushed to choose therapy with one of the Pagoda members, Alethea, and come to group our weekly meeting to deal with conflicts between our community members. Within a month or two, I began to find a new soul inside myself that would change how I felt about myself and my abilities for the majority of the rest of my life. It is one of those moments in my life that I will be eternally grateful to my Pagoda friends for being there and caring about me. It freed me to participate in social justice activism and has always been important to me. I have seen this deep friendship that many of us enjoyed so many times in so many ways, and even to this present day. It is a bond we will always have as we shared our lives and passions, including sports and games, even when things are not exactly a bowl of cherries. We learned to work together, play together, be there for each other as we struggled, and support a great cultural center. I will close with what is happening to one of our Pagoda members, Rose DiBernardo, who is 90 years old, struggling with aging, where she lives in Florida. Barbara Lou and I are working to help Rose find a better way to spend the remaining years of her life. This is what living in community for me is all about, and my photos often tell my stories. Thank you. Now I have some videos to show, but first, JR, we need to please turn